April 10th, 2019. What's special about it, other than that it's on a Wednesday? It's the strategic planning part rather than the finance part, which is the more regular part of FSP agendas. And we will all make it special today, won't we, Council? I will look first for a disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. I believe strategic planning is a commonly shared interest among all members of this municipality, including councillors. So we are as conflicted as everybody else that we serve in that respect. Moving on to the workshop, which is the only item we have on our agenda. I'll turn it over to Anna Marie Cipriani, the Executive Officer to the CAO and leading the staff side of our strategic planning operations. Anna Marie, take it away when you are ready.
Can you hear me?
I keep trying to turn you. I think we're all trying to turn the podium on. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. So I have a few words of welcome and orientation, and then I will hand things off so that we can move into this process of building our strategic plan. So I'd like to introduce you to Margot and to Trudy from MDB Insight and Eric from the Queen's Executive Decision Center. They will be leading the session this afternoon. So the intention today is to build the strategic plan and all of its components. So today, really your work is in a sense this top-down approach, and what has gone before today has been a bottom-up and outside-in. So in terms of bottom-up, you have received a scan summary on March 4th. You have received Wellbeing Waterloo Region data, particularly on Friday with the public release of the data, and I've provided for you on Friday a briefing note. Then there are also, in this presentation, findings of the consultation that has gone on in this phase. So that will be consultation with organizational leaders across our community, from our advisory committees, from staff, and through workshops with management. And that included managers, directors, and commissioners. So I want to note that while Councillor Bonagor is not able to be here today, she did run through a very similar session to the session you will run through, and she did that on Thursday with Eric. So what she has shared to usher this process forward is and will be captured in the product that gets created. So I have one thing that I want to impress upon you, and it's the following. The City of Waterloo subscribes to a hybrid model of strategic planning. By that, what I mean is that this strategic plan will serve as both the corporate strategic plan for the organization and the community and council strategic plan. It really is this two-pronged approach that we serve through the work that we are doing today. So, unless there are any questions for me or Eric or Trudy before we begin to move into our workshop process, that is all that I have to share with you. I will be here at the staff table, and Trudy and Eric will lead you through the process. Okay.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Anna Marie. Good afternoon, everyone. As Anna Marie indicated, my name is Trudy Parsons. It's my pleasure to be back. You may see me as a bit of a familiar face, having the work that we had done previously for the last strategic plan that is just coming to completion. And Eric, of course, was involved in that process as well. So what we'd like to do is walk through a bit of a presentation. We will share with you, as Anna Marie indicated, really with the focus on the new findings that have emerged through the conversations and consultations that have taken place since you received the scan summary report on March the 4th. Eric and I will sort of co-share the podium over the next few hours following that, working through the vision, the mission, the guiding principles, looking at the strategic themes and getting your consensus around what the priority themes need to be. And then we will look at specifically getting into the priority actions, like what are the specific actions that we're going to be focusing on over the remainder of the council for term for council. We'll also engage in a bit of a conversation around performance measure, and then we'll do a brief wrap up and inform you around next steps. So to begin, the process for the strategic planning initiative was really broken into 4 key phases. We are primarily right now at the stage where we are completing the end of stage 3. So as Anna Marie indicated, we have collected a lot of insight, perspective, and information through an exhaustive process of engagement, both internal with staff and management, as well as external with the community. And all of that will accumulate after today's session into a draft strategy document that will be presented back to council following its presentation to the steering committee driving the project with us and CMT as well. The final strategy is slated to be presented to council on June the 24th. So as part of that extensive engagement process, just a quick refresh, we're actually extended now to about 11,000 individuals that have had the opportunity to provide input. That is not to say that we have directly connected with 11,000 plus people, but through a number of surveys that have been initiated either at the city level or at the regional level, information has been collected and analyzed and interpreted for how it influences or informs the strategic planning process. And you can see a number of them are identified there specifically within the city. You had your citizen satisfaction survey that was launched late in the fall. There was the Wellbeing Waterloo, which Anna Marie mentioned, as well as we did an analysis of the Travel-Wise commuting report. What are the things that we learned? Well, we certainly know that Waterloo is a growing city. Your population, when you look at the data, shows an increase of about 7% when we look over the past, 2006 to 2016. So you are absolutely a growing city. There is a diversity and an intensification, which you are experiencing, of course, along with opportunities. They also bring some challenges. We also know that the city would be deemed to be a bit complex, and what we mean by that is that you have, very separate socioeconomic situations within your population. You have a very affluent and educated city with strong opportunity for engagement and participation within the city activities and the city life. But we also have residents in the city that would fall below the poverty line or the after-tax LIM. So there's definitely work to be done to take into consideration the social isolation and discrimination. And I think that was a message in my brief review of the report that Anna Marie shared on Friday with Wellbeing Waterloo. That was certainly one of the messages that I took away from that report. But I want to share with you some new insight, which will help hopefully to inform your thinking and your dialogue this afternoon. So we had a series of questions. We reached out to a group of about 40 local stakeholders. We did reach out to some at the regional level. So for instance, some of the post-secondary institutions, and I believe we talked to a couple of regional staff members as well. And we asked them a series of questions. So I'm just going to highlight, and you can see here on the screen, some of the comments that came back as a result of the question. Years out, if Waterloo is the place to be, what are we known for? So we felt that this really helped to inform the future vision for the city of Waterloo. And you'll see here, again, I'm not going to read all of these comments, but you see the use of words like tech and education. You see that we need to be a leader. We talk about innovation. We talk about taking risk. And certainly, you know, quality of life is something that is always deemed to be very important within any community. When we look at the second question, which was around how do we collectively create, or what is it that we need to do to make this a reality? And so the comments that came back for that question related to things like housing and ensuring that we have affordable housing, we have diverse housing, that we look at our new developments and where and how they look. We need to reduce homelessness and improve community services. There was identification around the importance of focusing on infrastructure and ensuring that our infrastructure is sustainable and ready to meet the growth and the challenges that we may face looking out to the future. City amalgamation was one of the comments that came up as well. Quality of life, again, certainly with a focus on vibrancy of offerings as well as reputation for arts and culture. And open up to the idea of what innovation is and how do we make ourselves a welcoming community, looking at sustainable innovation and ensuring that we are really, you know, looking at it from a risk or a bold perspective. Are there unrecognized opportunities or emerging opportunities that we could be leveraging, you know, as a city with our partners that exist around the municipality and certainly from around the region? And when we looked at that, you know, folks offered things like improving access to capital for startups. I had the opportunity yesterday to meet with a number of external committees around the economic development work that we're also involved in. And one of the things that came out loud and clear is the opportunity for the city of Waterloo to be a leader with entrepreneurship. And helping to grow those startup businesses and ensure that we're supporting them to not only start, but to continue beyond, you know, well into their life cycle. Looking at the efficiencies in amalgamation, and again, that was one of the things that was identified as a potential opportunity. Inclusionary zoning, so again, looking back at housing and the mix of built forms, the variations in the types and styles of housing that we should be looking at from a city perspective. Smart city initiatives, and again, that builds on the opportunity before the city of Waterloo to be successful with the bid for that smart city funding, and greater engagement from leaders. So again, creating the opportunity for folks to come together, to have these important and sometimes difficult conversations, and to collectively identify strategic approaches on how to deal with whatever the issue at hand may be. So I'm going to share some additional findings, but we've embedded those in various parts of this presentation as they relate to that piece of the presentation. So right now I'd like to turn our attention to examining our vision, mission, and guiding principles. And I'd like to start by, you know, just sharing a little bit of perspective that we have gathered, again, through the consultation process and certainly from our experience working with communities across Canada. And when we think about a vision, I mean, the vision is really about creating that aspirational description of, I always say, what do we want to be when we grow up? So when we're looking out into the future, what does the city of Waterloo look like? What does it feel like? How are people reacting, reflecting, and integrating themselves within the city? It provides an overarching focus of direction. I consider it to be, you know, really a roadmap guiding us to where it is that we're trying to get to. And it really is a critical piece to the inclusion of strategic priorities that drive the specific actions that are going to be happening across the municipality at the departmental level. So by creating a strong vision that everyone can see themselves a part of, it creates the opportunity for me as an employee of the city of Waterloo to find where I fit in the advancement towards that particular vision. So I sort of spoke to this already from an employee perspective, but from a resident perspective, you know, it also helps me to see my Waterloo. when I think about where I live, where I'm spending my time, whether I work in the city or work outside of the city, it's really about helping me define my Waterloo in the way that I define it. So I'm not being directed in how I need to interpret the future of the city. I am finding myself in the vision statement that the city has utilized. I wanted to share with you sort of a trend that we're starting to see happening certainly across Canada. And, you know, you may recall and I'll share with you the vision that was created as part of the last strategic plan process. You may look at visions that have been created in other municipalities across Canada. And oftentimes the conversation around those visions is, you know, I want to be able to look at this vision statement and see only my community. Like that has been a goal that a lot of communities have really strived for. And as I'm sure you can appreciate, it is extremely difficult to create any series of words that come together that only speak to Waterloo or only speak to, you know, St. John's, Newfoundland. It's, you know, when you write these statements and you look at them, if it didn't include the name of the city, oftentimes you would say, well, this could be my city and this could be your city. So we're starting to see folks getting away from that type of thinking and really simplifying the vision statement with the intent that it becomes a self-interpretation. So examples of that, Oakville, to be the most livable town in Canada. That is the vision for Oakville. York Region, strong, caring, safe communities. Cambridge, a place for people to prosper, alive with opportunity. The region of Waterloo, a community where people matter and ideas grow. So those are the vision statements that we're now starting to see emerge across municipalities that are revisiting their visions. The vision statement as it exists today in the current strategic plan for Waterloo reads as follows. Waterloo is world recognized for discovery, built on the strengths of our people and centered on entrepreneurship and opportunity, creating a vibrant, sustainable, welcoming, and prosperous community. So I ask you to remove the word Waterloo from that statement. And I suspect that you will see, as I was trying to reflect, that there are many cities that may see themselves as being able to use that as a vision statement by simply replacing Waterloo with the name of that particular community. The other element of the vision statement that was created as part of the strategic planning process in 2015 was that we utilized, and you can see a visual here, that Waterloo has earned a world-recognized reputation by being a caring, vibrant city of neighborhoods that is welcoming, inclusive, safe, and accessible, a sustainable city with healthy land, water, and air, an exciting city, rich in green space, recreation, leisure, heritage, arts, and culture, and an economic leader with a diverse economy fueled by educational institutions, entrepreneurs, and long-standing employers that retain talent. So that was really secondary to the vision. It was more of the application of the vision. This is how we know that we have earned the reputation as a world-class leader. So we're not reviewing this element. We certainly can have the conversation and get direction from council if you would like to see this continue into the next strategic plan, if you see it as being relevant to the potential new vision statement, which may emerge today from this process. So the key objective that I'd like you to keep in mind as we're engaging in this conversation is that the real power of a vision statement comes from the extent to which it can be remembered, embraced, and applied. And again, yesterday I had the opportunity, as I had mentioned, to meet with about 30 folks from the community around the Economic Development Initiative that we're working on, and something came up about branding, the branding of the city of Waterloo and the importance of the vision of the city of Waterloo. And so I just asked an aside question, who knows, does Waterloo have a vision? And the comment was, well, I'm sure they do, but I wouldn't have a clue what it is. And you'll see when I share some input from staff, that certainly came back from staff as well. There was a real disconnect among the staff that participated around where they saw themselves in the existing vision. So here's the input from management. When we had that conversation with management and we asked them about the vision, here are some of the comments that came through. And again, without, taking your time to read all of these, but it talked about, it should be a joint vision. So it's a vision the corporation owns as well as the community. It talked about the language needing to be more active, a sense of where we're going and being very aspirational. One of the comments that came was that the vision statement rarely gets used in grant applications because it doesn't speak to where we want to go. So staff are actually avoiding the utilization of the vision statement because they're not feeling the connection to the work that they're actually pursuing. The word prosperous may run counter to the concept of inclusion. There was a large discussion in the sessions by staff around that. The importance of the word discovery, it was felt that was a very strong word. And again, it's open to interpretation, but they felt that was a word that folks could relate to. And they would like to see it shift to a shorter, more concise statement. So, having taken all of that input, Margot and I, did consideration of what it was that we had heard, what we're seeing as best practices that are emerging across the country. And so we've crafted two potential statements that we will share with you. So the first one, and again, to be determined by council whether you like the use of the word Ontario or if you want to go more broadly and use Canada as the geographic area, to be, and I'll use Ontario for the purpose of reading it right now, to be Ontario's best community to live, learn, and grow. Live refers to the quality of place, amenities, strong neighborhoods. Learn refers to the presence of post-secondary and a learning culture. We don't just want to tie learning specifically to post-secondaries because learning takes place in the workplace, it takes place in the community, so it's much broader than just post-secondary. And grow refers to both personal growth as well as business growth. Alternative to that, we've kept pretty much the same statement, but we've replaced the word grow with the word create. Where create refers to a focus that embraces innovation, discovery, and the arts. And I can tell you that, again, based on the conversations that we've participated in and the input that we received, there has been quite a conversation that's taken place around the inclusion of arts and culture as a key driver to quality of life and quality of place. A more tech, assuming, that if we want to maintain sort of that, tech capital kind of approach, to be a global technology hub that values community and economic opportunity for all. So that's sort of a third one that we wanted to place before you as well. But if we're looking at this being a community vision, and as well as a municipal vision, then I'm not sure that the third one really reflects the opportunity to achieve that goal. So at this point, I'm going to pass it to Eric, and he's going to engage you in a bit of a dialogue around the vision.
These resonate with me. That's an abstention.
Yeah, you can. So click on.
Okay, just checking.
Looks like we're at
And I registered Neil's.
8. Okay.
Here are the results. So just so you see. Anybody not cast a ballot? So 6 of the 7 of you said option 1. I guess one person abstained. So thoughts on these two? We'll have some discussion. But to me, that's a fair amount of land. Delighted to hear any comments out of it. One abstention. Please.
I think we'll try to have today move as free-flowing as possible rather than as rigid as possible. So chime in and we'll try not to step over each other. If we start doing that, I'll come down with the hammer a bit more. Go ahead. Or the hammer a bit more, as the case may be.
Pardon? Oh, the hammer? Yeah, all right. Thank you. I didn't abstain. I did vote because I do like the essence of the first one. The word create, though, I worry that we are going to have to continually explain create what. So I like the idea that the definition we've used for that is including the arts, including the innovation. That's all really good. I'm just worried that create's going to cause us some issues.
So I guess what I struggle with inherently, if I put this in the context of the things that I hear about Waterloo and the economic development work that is happening, and when I listen to Tony Lamantia talk at the Waterloo Economic Development Corporation, Waterloo is considered more broadly worldwide as the entrepreneurial capital of the world, or at least the entrepreneurial capital of Canada. And that, in my mind's eye, entrepreneur aligns very closely with being leaders. And I see neither of these words here. And if I get back to what I heard in the presentation, this best community live, learn, and create, I could say, to me, every single community in Canada would say that. Because, like, live and learn, every community has a school, every community has people that live in it. And so this doesn't, in my mind, it doesn't get to the essence that sets us apart, which is we have three post-secondary educational institutes that are world-class. They're not just best in Ontario. They are world-class institutions, and they're known worldwide. We have, as I said, this entrepreneurial piece that sets us apart. And, in the recent surveys that I was listening to just this week, Waterloo region is one of the fastest growing regions in all of Canada from a population perspective. And none of that is here for me. And so that's why neither of these work for me.
Thanks. I like that one better. But what about back in the presentation? I can't find it now, but I circled innovation. So what about the word, like, innovate to me kind of resonates. Maybe should be in there somewhere too, because it seems like with, right? And why can't we be the world's best community to live, learn, and innovate in?
I think this is a really good discussion, and I think maybe any term we're throwing out really is pretty vague, so we might want to even define it. I see that it's better to be a little bit shorter, but even to define what does innovation mean? It means risk-taking. It does mean learning, the sort of culture of learning. So what does leadership, what does innovation mean? And words that describe that.
I'll let you get the last word.
Go ahead, Royce.
Yeah, the thing that I fear, I guess, and I don't have a fully formulated statement here, I guess, is the thing that I fear about talking about education, innovation, technology, growth from that perspective is that it leaves behind so many people who are part of this community. I agree entirely with Councillor Freeman's commentary about entrepreneurial spirit and us being an education and a technology city, but that's only... I don't know what the numbers are, but that's only half the city. And so we're really focusing on those people with our vision statement if we talk about that stuff, and leaving behind a whole host of other people.
Okay, I think I voted for number one. In terms of, I think, where we're going here, so when I talk about Waterloo, I talk about discovery, entrepreneurship, diversity. Those are the three things I call Canada's education city. But the Canada's education city is part of it representing, that's a snapshot in today's time, right? It's a fact and it's true, but here we're working on the vision statement, right? Of what do we want to do? And I think there's certainly efforts underway to position us as the creative capital of Canada that people around the horse would be familiar with. And, CREATE does involve creating art, creating companies. It does encapsulate the entrepreneurship. Learn is sort of, does speak to all the learning, the lifelong learning that goes on here. And I like the fact that it's short. I think we're really on a great step forward, only being at 1:30 or whatever time we're at in terms of working on this. But I think we're certainly well on our way. My one question is, in the slide deck, there was I think it was a survey of staff, and it said the word discover really resonated with them, yet it didn't make it to this. I'm just wondering why. I think I know why, but...
Sorry?
Because I do think when we're talking about this, it's a nice, the vision statement's nice, short, easy to remember, but it's then what you fill it with as you describe the vision statement, I think, is where it really comes to life, right? So the live part, where we just did our survey, found out quality of life was ranked 99%. Learn speaks to everything from Perimeter Institute to the college to the universities. Create arts and culture, where we want to go, and I think we all want to do that. Probably the one that, I guess, live, you really have to, that's where inclusion comes into play. And we really have to fill that belonging inclusion into the first word, live, as we would describe it.
Eric, do you want to give us some thoughts on this and where we're going before we keep going around?
Yeah. So I just wanted to hear people's concerns, and they're all really good that we can take them into account. I think on the distinguishing point, might be a good segue to talk about the mission now, because I think there are some points you need to look at them sort of together and just say, here's our vision, here's our mission. There might be some more ways to differentiate Waterloo in the mission.
I'm seeing further comments before we talk about that.
So kind of in that light, I guess my broader question to council is this. Do we see a vision statement as a big, audacious goal? Because I do. I see it as that thing that we're striving for and reaching for. And live, learn, and create do not create boundaries that are outside of our reach. They already happen. And so for me, if we reflect on the fact that staff haven't used the current vision statement that we have at all, the question then becomes why? Because that vision statement does not drive us towards something bigger, better, more audacious than we're already being. And these vision statements don't do that for me. We in my mind's eye, we need to be reaching for something more. And some of the things Dave said, what were the three words that you said, Dave?
Discovery, entrepreneurship, diversity.
Right. So in my mind's eye, like those are much harder things to achieve. Diversity and people recognizing that you're a diverse community and being willing to articulate that you're a community that embraces diversity, that's a much harder thing to achieve than to live somewhere, for example, in my mind's eye. And so this is where I'm at with this vision statement. Like, I want something that that can function as a proposal when we're asking to do something like, so if I give the example, the City of Waterloo is piloting a very different way to manage the soils that we take out of stormwater management ponds. We're trying something that's never been tried before. We've pushed the Ministry of the Environment to approve this. Imagine if we had a statement that spoke to that entrepreneurial piece and how it is that we came up with that. We came up with an asset management plan that other municipalities want to use. And we were first out of the gate with that. These vision statements don't support those grant applications in my mind's eye.
We did create the best of those. I'll go to Jen.
Well, I just love how super pumped you were there. Totally.
Yeah, you don't have to send me an email to ask if I'm okay because I was too quiet.
Great. I also wonder if there's opportunity to look at the word best. Like, what does that even mean? I mean, I know I'm wordsmithing here, but I think at this point it's important. So what does best mean? Do we want to be the most equitable? Do we want to be the most diverse? I have some concerns with the word diverse. So if you were to bring that back, I'd probably share that at some point. I see. Yeah. Okay.
That was snapshot of time.
I know. Yeah, for sure. So do we want to be the most equitable? Do we want to be the most sustainable city to do this, this, and this? So I also wonder about looking at the word best and what do we mean?
So just before Eric jumps in, if it's okay with council, I'd just like to share some thoughts based on the conversations that I've heard and certainly the points that have been raised here today. And I want to go back to one of the points that I made around the importance of every individual, whether they are an employee, whether they are a business owner, whether they are a student, whether they are a member of the municipality as an employee, to be able to see themselves in this vision. And I'm sorry, I can't see your sign there. Freeman? Thank you, Councillor Freeman. So I just want to go back to your point around the work that you're doing around the management of the soil. So as you were speaking, the word that came to my mind there was learn. So what I would like, I guess, to emphasize is the importance of looking at the words not in the way that I am anticipating someone else to interpret that word, such as best, but rather how I, as an individual within the City of Waterloo, can interpret that word. So I think about it as an employee. If I'm an employee of the City of Waterloo and I'm not advocating for this. I mean, we will go with what you decide is the vision. But if I am an employee with the City of Waterloo and this is the vision, my thinking would be, how is what I do every day in my job helping to move us toward being the best place to live, to learn, and create. So in my job, I'm creating every day. I'm developing, I'm delivering, I'm informing. How am I doing that to the best of my ability to move this forward? If I am a resident, one of the comments that came up in the discussions that we had was around the use of the word entrepreneurship. The comments included things like staff felt that it was a very economic development focused vision currently. And not everyone in the City of Waterloo is an entrepreneur or wants to be an entrepreneur. So, they pointed out that by using the word entrepreneurship in the vision, is it excluding rather than including individuals that have no interest, inclination, or desire to follow an entrepreneurship path? So I just share that with you just as further information to inform your discussion. Thank you.
What I would suggest is we go through the mission, go through the themes, go through the priorities and the actions, and then come back to this and say, does this make sense? And if not, how would we change it? Because I think you can spend hours on vision and, I will start losing my hair. And what I would propose is we put some more kind of thinking into our future direction through the mission, through the themes, through the priorities, and then we'll come back to this. Is that okay? You okay with that? Okay, can you flip back to Julie, please? So, to Trudy's, or to the podium? Okay.
Great, thank you very much. So moving on to the mission, again, the objective of the mission is really, why does the municipality as an entity, as a corporation, why do we exist? And it's very much an inward-focused statement that is intended to guide decisions, to guide operations, and service delivery for the city. The existing mission statement that we have in place in the current strategy reads as follows. The corporation of the City of Waterloo is a committed team of volunteers, staff, and elected officials who provide leadership and delivery of efficient and effective services to support a vibrant and prosperous community. When we had the conversation with management, specifically around the mission, again, there were mixed thoughts and comments. Just to share sort of some of the overarching, some folks felt that the statement accurately reflected what it was that the city did. The concept of engaging communities or engagement is missing. I know on several levels we do this, but it is not reflected in that mission statement in the mind of that particular individual that made that comment. The mission should reflect the concept of delivering valued services to our community. What we do together matters. And then there was some commentary around the importance of certainly recognizing volunteers. However, with this particular statement, the feeling was that a better team order would be elected officials, staff, and volunteers. And I don't know if members of council that were here at the last strategic planning session remember, but we had quite a discussion around sort of the order of how these would be reflected in the strategy. And as you can see from the existing strategy, the use of the word volunteers was actually placed before council and staff. So taking into account the existing, taking into account what we heard, this is, I guess, what I would consider to be more of a tweak to the existing vision. The Corporation of the City of Waterloo is committed to supporting sustainable growth and an inclusive, vibrant community through the delivery of service excellence. We are supported in this effort through a team of volunteers, staff, and elected officials that share a commitment to fiscal responsibility, healthy workplaces, effective communications, and personal leadership. So I'll switch it back to Eric.
So we don't have any options for you folks here. We just want to get your feedback on this, and I open it to people's comments and concerns. Remember that underneath this, we're going to have some what we're calling strategic themes that will be what is it that we're going to focus on.
Eric, you're on the wrong slide here. Can you go back?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So there's the draft for your comments.
Well, it's longer. Who would like to go in?
Yeah. I think when you think of what a mission statement is supposed to do, it says what the corporation is, what you do, and who you do it for or with. So it ticks all those boxes. We could wordsmith it again to death, but it does tick what we're supposed to be doing. So I think it's because the mission statement is not something you're going to remember ever.
No,
but it is something though from a decision making standpoint. As we're looking at decisions, we've got to say, okay, are we being true to our mission? Are we hitting the objects of the corporation? So we got to keep those things in mind. So I'm okay with it.
–
Well, with the addition of the word "a team of volunteers," it just looks weird right now. Like, I can live with this.
Okay.
Other feedback. Well, higher praise of mission statements have never been made. I don't
this
think,
mission statement is in alignment with where we've been, right? Like sustainability, it's important. I think we strive to be a vibrant community, and that covers some of, when I think of vibrancy, I can't help but think of arts and more broadly our cultural initiatives. And I'm always trying to remind people that arts and culture does not exclude sports, because that's part of our culture, right? And so I think that whenever we think about vibrancy, we also have to think about our hockey teams, our soccer teams, our lacrosse teams, rugby, everything. And so, and I think that service excellence is something that we speak to a lot as a city, and so it seems in alignment with that on many aspects. I do like putting volunteers first. Again, I think that's fair. And staff too. I think staff are the front lines, and we just navigate people through the system. So
we're also relatively low on the totem pole for how people want to give input to and hear things based on the stuff we've received. Other thoughts? Dave?
I'm happy to see the word sustainable, sustainable, inclusive, vibrant, and communication. Those are ones I think really speak to me in the things that we want to do in terms of sustainability, all different types, the inclusiveness we want to build, the vibrant community that we're building, but also communication. I think that we all found that during the election campaign, that citizens aren't really looking for, we're not sure how to best communicate with citizens. So that effective communication, whatever that is, we need to work towards that.
We'll have effective communication, and we will do it TBD. Other thoughts on this, Jen?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good. Too, I think it's like a little bit, one of the things we're supposed to be doing in terms of effective communication is making sure we're communicating at a grade 5 comprehension and reading level. So that's something that I'm not seeing in this. And I think by doing that exercise, we might even more clearly be explaining what our mission is. Like, what does inclusive mean? What does vibrant community mean? Vibrant is not a word I knew in grade 5. Maybe I did. I don't know. Who knows? But, like, these aren't, it's not accessible language. That would be my feedback about it.
Okay. Need some terminology, some definitions. Okay. Any other concerns? Okay. So, guiding principles. Trudy, do you want to speak to these?
Certainly. So again, as part of the previous strategic planning exercise, and these landed directly in the strategic plan, of course, what you see here was what was presented and determined by council to be the principles by which your decisions would be guided. So, in essence, when you think about a guiding principle, it's really these must ring true for you when you're making the decision that you're making. And the ones that council landed on, service excellence, effective communication, healthy workplace, fiscal responsibility, personal leadership. And again, you'll see that these have been also reflected. If we went back to the mission statement, you can see that these actually are core to why we exist. So not really being presented for any reason other than to say, are you still comfortable with these remaining as the guiding principles moving forward into the new strategic plan? These were in the last strategic plan, correct?
You know what we hate? That effective communication. That should go. No.
Do you know what it is? I don't understand. I don't understand what personal leadership means, and I don't understand I do understand what healthy workplace means. I think part of it is in this language that isn't clear. And in some ways, the strategic plan needs to be kind of broad and allow for nuance and not so directive. So on one hand, I really appreciate that, but on another, some of this like just doesn't even, when I don't know what it means, it's hard for me to kind of really embody what that means as someone who's currently a leader at city council. So so that's my only feeling about it. And honestly, I could process this for 5 days. So, and I know we don't have 5 days to process that, so I don't want to take over the conversation or lead us completely astray, but just so you know that I'm not feeling it totally because I don't totally understand it. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Again, we need some operational definitions of what each of these mean, is what I'm hearing. Okay. Any other concerns? So,
yeah, just I'm going to echo Councillor Vasic's comment, but I'm going to point to another one. You got rid of it.
Sorry.
See, I can't even remember what it was. Service excellence. I mean, I understand what that means because we're talking about it here. But if I was to say that to even my wife, she would be like, "I have no idea. Like, what does that mean?" I think a little more clarity behind what some of these things. Like, I guess I get it as a guiding principle, but what does that look like, I guess, is what I'm struggling with. And so if we're pointing to these 5 things, these are the 5 core principles of the corporation. I think they should be easily understood by anybody that we're talking to.
Okay.
Well, thanks. I would just agree. I would agree with that as well. When I look at the vision, mission, and these, you could call these values or guiding principles, whichever. They almost need a behavioral statement that goes along with it. So how are we demonstrating this? And these are pieces that, yes, they fit in our strategic plan, but they also, again, are the backdrop of decisions we're going to be making. So we need the clarity around that. I like the titles that are there, but I'm with Councillor Vasic and Councillor Bodley that I need to be able to say we're demonstrating this by, so that we can explain it. So,
what are the observable behaviors for each one of them?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I just did a workshop with another council on, they have 6 core values, and we went through what are the observable behaviors for each one of these, and how are we doing against those? And it was quite a discussion of the culture.
Well, it does give us a good opportunity, if I can add in again through you, Chair. It gives us a way of measuring, to near and dear to Councillor Vasic's heart, measuring the outcomes and what we're actually doing.
Okay.
Diane?
Yeah, it's interesting revisiting these too in light of those comments because, you know, how do we question ourselves? Whether it's an annual basis or not, about whether or not we achieve these particular things within our staff team. And service excellence to the broader citizenry would be substantially different than service excellence as an individual feels as though they've tried to deliver that service, right? And so I think that there's value in thinking about that moving forward. Like, I'm okay with these, but I'd like to think more about that. And when I think of some of these guiding principles, I mean, I think we could better align even our business plans, for example, to try to unpack some of these guiding principles.
Okay. So again, I don't think that this is a deal breaker. The comments around fleshing these out into observable behaviors. And I think as we go through the strategic themes, we might see some other guiding principles that you might add. So I'm going to transition into the strategic themes and priorities. So we have 10 strategic themes. So just in terms of the terminology here, the strategic theme or the high-level sort of area of focus, inclusion, sustainability, and the environment. And then underneath those are some priorities that get a little more tangible in terms of what are we going to do or how are we going to address each of these themes. So we are going to spend this first part digesting the strategic themes, and we've got 10 of them. Sustainability and the environment, transportation, inclusion, resilient neighborhoods and strong communities, quality of place, and then affordability and infrastructure, engagement and communication, growth and development, and corporate excellence. So underneath each of those, we have some priorities. But what we'd like to do, first of all, is just share with you some of the ranking and priorities from the advisory committees. So we asked them to prioritize these strategic themes. This is just so you have more kind of perspectives. Trudy, do you want to talk about this at all?
Oh, thank you. So again, this I had made reference earlier on that we would be sharing more information with you that has been gathered sort of since the scan summary, and this would be part of that information. So one of the things that we had asked the advisory committees through the working groups to identify was they were presented with these 10 strategic themes. And they were asked to prioritize the ones which were most important or seen as most relevant to what the municipality would be focusing on over the current remainder of term for council. And you can see here, starting sort of they rank from the bottom up. Inclusion was certainly deemed to be number one. Infrastructure renewal, safe, sustainable transportation, quality of place, and sustainability in the environment. So you can see that those sort of as a group of five really rose to the top, so to speak. And then the others, you can see that they sort of, wean off a little bit, with communications and engagement having the least number of votes from within those advisory committees. We also asked staff to do a very similar exercise, although much more comprehensive, just to sort of set the context. The advisory committees had a 30-minute meeting in which they were given a presentation and an opportunity to sort of organize their thoughts with regards to the order of priority. With the staff, we did about a 3-hour meeting. And so really had the opportunity to delve much more deeply and allow them to have breakouts at their tables and have these conversations. And so there were 3 sessions that were held with staff across the various departments with the management team. And here you can see we presented them basically as options for you. So across all of the different meetings, there was not a single landing on here are the 3 or here are the 4. They all had a variation of that. So beginning with option 1, as we've called it, the themes that really rose to the top for this group were around sustainability, with the elements included in that to be infrastructure renewal, safe, sustainable transportation. So they actually tried to group them. When you look at the 10, you'll see, for instance, safe, sustainable transportation is identified as a grouping in and of itself. What this group did was they brought it in under that sustainability bucket, so to speak. Second, their priority was around strong community and resilient neighborhoods. And underneath that bucket, they talked about quality of place, inclusion, and affordability. And corporate excellence was their third bucket, where they talked about engagement and communication, economic development, and innovation. The second grouping offered up 4 for consideration. Sustainability, and again, underneath sustainability, you can see that they included safe, sustainable transportation, infrastructure renewal, sustainability in the environment. Second, they chose strong community and resilient neighborhoods, where they saw affordability and inclusion being included under that bucket. Service excellence, inclusion of engagement and communication and corporate excellence. And development and innovation, and this is where they saw growth and development and quality of place. Looking to option number 3, again, 4 buckets, but you'll see across the bottom that this group identified 3 themes that they felt were encompassing across all of the strategy. And those were corporate excellence, engagement and communication, and inclusion. So they really felt that those were not buckets that should be separate in and of themselves, but rather these themes should be across every strategic theme that we identify and should be inclusive of every single thing that we do. So when we look at a priority or we're looking at a particular initiative, these need to be reflected in those actions. The groupings, growth and development, sustainability, quality of place, and their last bucket was safe, sustainable transportation. And the final grouping landed on 6. So again, sustainability, strong community and quality of place, infrastructure renewal, growth and development, engagement and communication, and inclusion.
No, over to me.
Eric, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you. So the reality is there's different ways you can slice and dice these, and we could spend a lot of time clustering in different ways, and they are interdependent, and that's probably a good thing, right? There's some overlap. But we would like to get your views on, of these 10 strategic themes, which ones of these are most critical to make progress on in the first couple of years. So all of these are important. All of these are really, really important. But if we have a 4-year plan, 2019 to 2022, over the next couple of years, phase 1, if you will, which ones of these do we need to make significant progress on? So of these 10, which 5 would you suggest? Because if we have 10 themes coming out of the starting gate, we have too many. So which ones of these do we need to make significant progress on in years 1 and 2? And then as time and resources permit, we can tackle the other ones. So if you had to pick 5, which 5 would you pick? And what I want you to do on your screens is down with your mouse down the right-hand column, pick 5. Okay? Just do the best you can here. So you're going to pick 5. Let me know if I can help you. You need to use your mouse. Is this working? It's working. It's fine. Should be good to go. I'm just checking that everything's functioning. So you need to use your mouse. Click down the right hand. Is that working? Is that working? Do you need help? You okay? I mean, sorry. I mean, I'm not going to do that. So it's not right. And when you're finished, click on the ballot box again. I am, yeah. Yep. Okay, so what happens here, folks, is the system collects the results, and I've put in Councillor Bonagar's results also. And anybody not cast their ballot? Okay. So actually, the picture is helpful in this instance in that 7 of the 8 of you picked those first 4. And then there's 5 of the 8 of you infrastructure renewal. And I think this is on your screen, sorry. Sorry, there's the graph, taking away the graph. So what I was hoping for to take to the next part is something like 4 to 6 strategic themes. Because what we're going to do next is say, well, what are we going to do against each of these strategic themes in terms of priorities, actions? And to me, there's 4 there that are pretty clear. But I'm happy to entertain arguments for taking infrastructure renewal as also a key theme that we need to make progress on in the next couple of years. Open it up to conversation.
I just wanted to offer one to take off the table, or 2 actually I would take off the table, and put them more as an expectation or a method of how we're going to do things, and that would be engagement and communication. The expectation is no matter what we're doing on any of these things that we have an engagement and communication, so it becomes embedded. It's not just a thing to do. And then I would question the same thing with corporate excellence, that if we are doing all of these other things, we're doing it to the best of our abilities. So I can get us down to 8.
Yeah. So these are embedded in everything that we do. Corporate excellence and engagement and communication is what you're saying.
It's like we say that technology is the enabler, engagement and communication is the enabler to achieve, and the same thing with corporate excellence. If we aren't strong and good at what we're doing, we're not going to make any of these things work.
Okay.
I saw your hand, Diane, and Royce and Jen.
It's just with regard to infrastructure renewal. I feel like that has been a key theme in everything that we've been doing as a city for the past 10 years or longer, because it was left undone. Like when we got here in 06, when I got here in 06, it had really been left undone. And I think that that's a particular piece that's critically important. So if I'm gonna, hold my hand up, I'd like to see those, first 5 come up as being the things. And I agree with Councillor Hamner too. Like, I don't think we can lose sight of important things like affordability, engagement, and communication. And the question is, in my mind's eye, do they roll in? Like, when we talk about building sustainability in the environment, if we don't have a sustainable living environment where people feel that they can afford to live here, we've missed the mark, right? So I think that some of these pieces have to be embedded in what we're thinking going forward.
Okay.
Royce, then Jen.
I want to echo the conversation around embedding. To me, many of these things need to be embedded within all of our strategic plan. We can't have them exist in silos. To me, if they're existing in silos and people are trying to tackle sustainability in the environment without talking about infrastructure renewal or vice versa, I mean, I think there's a problem there. And I think I appreciate the staff exercise of sort of putting elements within within themes, but I mean, I think we need to be more creative on that and think about how we embed various things across all of the themes that end up emerging.
Okay.
I want to speak to the 5th thing that I voted for, aside from the first 4, which was engagement and communication. And I appreciate the idea that it needs to be embedded. There's no doubt. And the only reason I voted for it as a standalone commentary from a theme perspective is that, to me, that's the one thing that my constituents, when I was talking to them throughout the campaign, were like whether they were talking about snow clearing or bylaw or infrastructure improvement, et cetera, what they were speaking to was that no one's telling me what's going on, or I don't know how to find the information. And so I think getting people on side with what the strategic plan is really important, and that goes back to communication for me. Not that I'm against infrastructure renewal, and I think it's probably wise for us to have that as the fifth theme out of here, given some of the challenges we're going to face in the next 4 years. And then the last thing I just wanted to speak to was around affordability, and why I didn't vote for that, although I was thinking about it, is I feel with affordability, one of the things that I would like more clarity on is affordability for who. Because when residents who live in multi-million-dollar homes are complaining about their property taxes, that doesn't resonate with me nearly as much as when I went through the data here. The thing that really stuck out for me is we have 11% of our population making over $200,000 a year as a household, and we still have 9% of our population making less than $20,000 a year. That's awful. That we can have 10% of the income of our wealthiest people be the entire income of our residents who are in the who are not as well off. So I'm all in favor of affordability as a theme if it speaks to whom the affordability comes to. So those are my comments.
Okay.
Jen.
Okay, so I guess I'm not clear what is the difference between a theme and a guiding principle, because I think some of these are guiding principles, those cross-cutting themes that we embed in all of what the city does.
You want me to tackle that one? So I think of guiding principles as things that will shape our behaviors. So observable behaviors, core values or principles should shape the way we make decisions and interact with each other, with staff, and with residents. I think of strategic themes as sure, there's some overlap, but I think of them as sort of areas of focus for action. And we're calling them action. Underneath these themes, we have some actionable priorities, actionable initiatives. So I think of the principles and core values as usually more behavioral related.
David? Oh, you want to continue on, Jen? Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just want to note that if we lose quality of place, we lose increasing engagement with arts and culture sector. It's the only place where that exists. So if we lose it, we lose that.
Okay, so just to be clear on what I said at the outset, I'm talking about sequencing these things. These things are all important, but if you go in June 1st with 10 themes, those are too many. So I'm thinking about, and actually you're landed on 5, I think, to where are we going to focus our efforts first, and then as time and resources permit, we take care of some of these other things.
Yeah, I totally understand. I hear you. I just think that we've had conversations about arts and culture, and we have one more opportunity to do a budgeting process for the next 3 years. And so, if we put things in 2 years from now, we do lose out, right? So, just to note that's all.
So what I'm going to suggest is the next step is I am actually going to dig into these top 5 and say what exactly are we going to achieve, or what are we going to tackle in terms of actionable items. And I'm going to allow for, to Jen's point, an opportunity to identify other actions that are critical, that are outside of those top 5. I'm going to call those a miscellaneous set of actions that may not fit into the top 5, but are crucial for us to pursue in 2019, 2020. So, yep.
Just this is the last one. I just want to also suggest, like, if you're thinking logic model wise, I think strong community and resilient neighborhood is more impact/outcome versus strategic theme. Just a suggestion.
Got it. That's a good point. Anybody else?
So I've got Dave, I've got Sandra, and I'm going to chime in as well. Dave?
I just wanted to note that items 1 and 2 have a lot of commonalities to them, like an active transportation system, complete streets is good for the environment. It's good for sustainability. It's everybody can use it. It's inclusive. So just there's some commonalities in 1 and 2. I do see that they're different, but there's some
There's some
commonalities.
interdependencies. Yeah.
And Councillor Vasek, when I was looking at the strong community and resilient neighborhood, to me that spoke to the arts, because I thought of the same thing. It needed to be there too. And I also see from the logic model standpoint that's more of an outcome. But that's when I was looking at that, everything that makes us as a strong community could be tied into that sports, recreation, arts, and culture.
I think these will go down and then come back up. I think from my point of view, as I was answering some of these and figuring out how to get to 5 from 10. Because all of us struggled with that in our own way for good reason, is listening to what Eric had said as the statement of, in the next couple of years, what do we really need to move? What do we need to make substantial progress on? Not just some progress, a little bit here, a little bit there, but where if we're going to focus effort, we're going to make the biggest bang for the buck. So for me, the engagement and communication, we can always do a lot more. I struggle with figuring out what actions come under that to achieve those buckets, and generally the feedback we've got through the strategic planning process is we're not doing bad. We can always do a lot better. And so this wasn't an area where I was going to say this is where we really need to spend our next 2 years getting this one until we are the best in Canada at doing this. But there's a lot of stuff here above it that we do need to make timely progress on quickly, and I'm happy to be on a much slower holding or slowly rising pattern on some of the ones that bubble down. So,
I was thinking two things: what you just said and what Jen had said earlier with regard to whether it's a strategic theme or it's an outcome. And and what Dave said about sustainability and the environment. And when I look at where it feels as though we're heading in the next 4 years, I feel like we're more heading towards safe, sustainable transportation systems as the primary strategic theme, and that when you look at sustainability in the environment, that fits very much into strong community and resilient neighborhoods, because resiliency aligns itself very close to a sustainable environment. And I agree with Jeff. And I was the same as Royce. I actually picked engagement and communication, and then I was tossed up like Dave was between the first two themes being very similar, right? So I picked them both because I feel like the way we're going to achieve this sustainability in the environment is primarily through changing how we think around infrastructure renewal and our transportation systems, because we're looking at higher order transit. Those are the things that strategically we're very much focused on as a city. So part of me kind of does want to see engagement and communication rise up, and I'd be willing to kind of take out sustainability and the environment by saying that the actual strategic theme within that is the safe, sustainable transportation and the strong community and resilient neighborhoods. So I'll just throw that out there, and Councillor Hamner was talking about rolling things up. And so I guess I offer that as a suggestion. Is that a way that other people could see to roll this up? Because I don't know how to get the engagement and communication piece right, but we have to.
Eric, what's the next step in our process?
Can you flip to the podium laptop? What I would propose is that we go on to the well, first of all, I suggest we take a little stretch break. And then I'm going to go into the priorities. I am going to work with these 5 themes, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to identify some actionable things that might have engagement and communication or some other things underneath these 5 themes. So after the break, we're going to move to the how-tos in addressing our top 5 themes. How much time do you want to take for a break? 15 minutes? Is that okay? Or 20? Well, let's take 15. I suggest you get up and have a stretch because the next part is pretty intense.
Okay. So Jen is opposed to a break. Can you tell us why, Jen?
Yeah. I'm just so excited. I just wanted to say, I mean, I've emailed, just because Councillor Bonagor is not here, I can't chat with her about this kind of input that she and I created together. And so I don't want to not say that. It would take probably 3 minutes for me to read it. I feel like this might be the time before we launch into the how-to, because it ties into the conversation about how to embed particular values throughout every phase. And so I guess I'd like to say it, both because we spent some good time writing it, and we really believe it and believe this is the right forum to share it. And because Councillor Bonagor isn't here, I don't want to make the decision myself not to read it. So happy for direction.
And I defer to you.
If you'd like to read it, you can read it. We all received it. You can highlight key points. You can read the whole thing word for word. It's up to you.
What are the 2 or 3 key messages you want to get across?
Have you seen it? Was it sent to you?
I've read it. Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Okay. So I can read it?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for seeing my internal struggle also. Okay. With this input, we are asking Council to entrench into its work through the strategic plan an overarching and pervasive dual principle of equity and environment. Both of these principles are interlinked, and each is rooted in the fundamental need to create, now, the foundation for a healthy and inclusive future for all. Equity is about treating people differently in the pursuit of fairness so that everyone can more fully participate in democracy, in the economy, and in their communities in ways that are meaningful to them. Environment is making sustainable choices, choosing to change how we move, live, work, and play in order to take real and substantive action on climate change. Both of these principles are foundational to our future health as a city. By embedding equity as a guiding principle, we can act on accessibility, community and neighborhoods, housing affordability, access to vibrant public space, transportation, newcomer services, neighborhood resilience, growth and development, and more. By embedding environment as a guiding principle, we can create sustainability in growth and development, create safe streets, support strong community and quality of place, invest in our infrastructure, and work alongside Indigenous peoples and nations to identify and act on our responsibilities to address the Truth and Reconciliation Commission calls to action. In some ways, these principles already exist. We already do treat people differently. Those with access to time, networks, and financial and other resources can already advocate more often, thereby meaning they can more effectively get the city's attention. The aim of this input is to broaden that advocacy. The matters being raised are helping me to better understand how a city runs, where we can make improvements through city building, and how to ultimately make this community an even better place to live for everyone. This proposal is about what is at the core of city building, people and place. Equity as a practice will create the conditions for inclusion, and that is something that we are all striving for in this welcoming and loving community. Environment as a principle will make bold steps now to affect change in behavior, city building, investment, and neighborhoods in order to nurture, protect, and support future generations. Moving forward with an equity and environment lens will help the city put into place the mechanisms that will identify who is and who is not represented at all levels of city building, on council, staff, program participants, on committees of council, actively increase representation of people of different genders, races, income levels, sexual orientation, gender identity, ability, age, and more. Identify policy frameworks that codify sustainable practice both within the city bureaucracy and across the city itself. Create a framework to help the city consider how decisions from snow removal to new buildings to economic development will impact those who are most marginalized in our community. Adopt a triple bottom line that uses social, environmental, and economic indicators to truly assess our success as a city. We know there are many who are being left out and who are not able to meet their full potential.
We know that the future health of our city relies on the future health of our environment. This is our opportunity to set a new course and to show the world that Waterloo is a leader with heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Royce?
Sorry, before we break in, I feel bad taking over your shine there because that was amazing and I loved it. So thank you. I want to bring it back to something before we take our break. The idea of separating sustainability and environment from safe, sustainable transportation. While I understand the idea, I'd like us to think like if the word sustainable was not in transportation, would we still be considering not having sustainability in the environment if we were looking at sustainability in the environment and safe transportation? Just because sustainable is there twice doesn't mean that they're covering the same thing. And I would point us to the document that the Sustainability Advisory Committee gave us. Very little conversation about transportation. Not that they don't think that that's important. They absolutely do. But, there's a lot of conversation in there around meeting our 80 by 50 goals, so reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, talking about grant dollars supporting community-led environmental initiatives, talking about liters of water consumed at the city. So these things have nothing to do with safe and sustainable transportation, and they're exceptionally important, and I think we should continue to be leaders on them. So I just wanted to bring that forward before we consider that those are just the same thing and we only need one of them.
And I saw Sandra.
Thank you. My comments back to Councillor Vasek. Thank you for the work that both you and Councillor Bonnegaard did on creating the framework. When I looked at the principles that we were thinking about, there was a missing piece. And the two that you have suggested are two that I think should be in part of the principles. They're more than just the strategic plan. They should be principles that are guiding, again, back to all our decisions we're making. So to me, that's where we should try to focus on the two concepts of, and I'm not going to do it service in paraphrasing it, but the two principles that you brought forward, I think those are good principles for us to consider adding in our principles so that no matter what we're doing, we're looking at the vision, mission, and these are our behavioral principles that we're doing, and they fall into the decision-making that we have.
They fit. That's a nice upgrade.
The work is excellent.
Suggestion is we try to work.
The suggestion is let's play with it with the principles component. Absolutely.
Jen, would that be acceptable to you? We've got 5 guiding principles right now, and what you just read through, we might add at least one principle. And probably, sorry.
And I think given there's 5, it's the idea of taking both of those and looking back at the principles and seeing what that means. It doesn't mean 5 plus 2 equals 7. 5 plus 2 will equal some number that will get determined.
Okay.
They'll be added, but equals doesn't just mean fully additive. The team can sort of go away with that. Are we ready for our break now?
Yep, sounds good. It's 2:35. Do you want to come back at, say, 20 minutes? Is that okay? All right. Thank you, folks.
We'll see everybody in 15, and it'll be 20.